It's that time again. You know what time it is. Transfer time. I'm Trev Downey. That's Dave Davis. And we're going to talk you through the latest. And there is some latest. You may not like it. You may love it. You may hate it. But it is what we've been hearing via the various sources that Dave has been accruing over his time doing this show. And we're anxious to bring it to you. So let's get straight into it, my friend. Where do you want to start? What do you think's our jumping off point here?
This is one where, we said before we went live, this window is now, we're going yellow tie time, aren't we? We can't get away from that. These are going to go right to the deadline. And in the crudest terms, it feels like a bit with the window ending, it'll be death or glory. It just feels that way, doesn't it? It never is, but it just feels like there's no in between. So do you know what? We'll just start from the top, won't we, Liverpool-wise, and let's unravel them one by one.
Let's do it because everyone is waiting anyway. And by the way, for those of you in the chat who come in about 5 minutes and go, what's the story with Isak? We're doing it now. So I can't help you. So let's have a look at the latest with the Isak situation, Dave. And there are some developments. Even as we speak, we'll hold our hands up and admit that we're that much slaves to this transfer crack that we've gotten ourselves into, that we were waiting for a little bit of a teaser there at 6:30 to see if it was going to make any big difference. It didn't. But the developments around Isak have been mostly positive in terms of Liverpool's hopes, because it looks as if, doesn't it, there was a big effort to sway him one last time to stay. Apparently a contract dangled in front of the lad. Apparently the big boys were in town to talk to him face to face. And apparently Isak's heels are firmly stuck in the ground.
Yeah, I kind of like this development update, whatever you want to call it, that there was a big drama yesterday, wasn't there? Because, Newcastle fans were wound up to hell as the game was showing last night, but they were excited from transfer-wise as the Sheikh was flying in, wasn't he? And he was going to get stuff sorted. And then there's the reports before the game that Jamie Reuben, one of the owners of the Reuben family, and the PIF delegation, they'd gone to meet Alexander Isak at his home, which was interesting because he gave up that rental one, as we know, didn't he? So I'd be intrigued where that house is. Well, that's a different discussion for another day, of course, in that regard. So the big thing that came out and this is important to say, Newcastle journalists are reporting that Isak has remained unaffected by that, not interested at all. Dug his heels in, as you said. As Fabrizio Romano and others have tweeted, absolutely no interest in going back and doing a bit of digging. As you know, I've been sending you screenshots and we've been WhatsApping and chasing things down all day. That Newcastle put another contract offer in front of him with even an option of a release clause for next season, lower than the amount we're talking about for his sale. And it was still no, I want to go. So the positive development for me is he's looked in the whites of the eyes of the owners, isn't he, and made it clear. This felt like a final roll of the dice a little bit. And we'll have to see what develops. But at the same time, this kicked off again, didn't it? Newcastle making this move for Strand Larsen. Talks that, and this was an interesting tweet that Jan Arge Fjortoft put out this morning saying 50 million bid rejected, but I still expect this deal to go through. And it's important to say quite a few journalists, even ones from, Wolves and Newcastle end, are still saying that at the same time. There is a belief this will go through. It's just, small amounts, sort of 5 million, which isn't small in the real world, but obviously in transfer terms isn't that big a deal to get sorted. There's another bid expected. Now, there's the obvious line that people are doing them saying, oh, well, he'll be the Callum Wilson replacement. But considering Callum Wilson played about 300 minutes last season, are Newcastle really going to pay about 60 million quid for a backup? I think we've all got thoughts on that, haven't we, realistically? So he's in the mix. This is still in the mix, although seems to be one that's not quite getting the traction that we want. Suppose with this, Trev, the end game has got to come eventually because look where we are in the day. It's Tuesday evening and it shuts on Monday evening, doesn't it? It's 6 days' time. But there's nothing guaranteed with this. But the meeting, the way it's working, I would say this has got a real positive feel to it. There's nothing guaranteed, but the way Newcastle are making these moves, I wouldn't be surprised if Strand Larsen's next bid gets made maybe tomorrow or the day after that gets wrapped up. I've just got a good feeling about this one now.
It's funny, isn't it, the way it can oscillate so wildly over the course of a day or 24 hours. And like I said, we were sort of hanging on for one of our mutually favorite Twitter accounts to give us a little bit of an extra bit of info there, which turned out to be not so much info as padding on the previous story and all about green lights and money and all the rest of it. And that all just feels like, a certain degree of fluff. And I understand people need to keep this story going, but there's nothing real apart from what you've just told us there. And that is very real. That's actual progress in that we've got a lad who's taken a real clear stand about wanting to come to Liverpool. That's great for us. We've got the message being received loud and clear by his club, his current employers. That's great. We all have listened ad nauseum to the contract chat. There was a very interesting conversation you were probably privy to in the AI WhatsApp, where we got some deeper insight into what that might mean. But there are all sorts of ways out of this for Newcastle where they end up doing really well for themselves with a big ball of money, and we get the player we want, and they get to fatten the coffers a little bit. And if this Strand Larsen thing is the one that finally gets over the line for them, I can see how you're spinning this to positivity. Can you just, for the sake of those who maybe haven't followed it as closely today, why is this one a little bit different to all of the other striker failed moves that they've made? Why do you feel that this one might be positive? I know you've kind of said it, but just reiterate for folks why you think this one might get done. Do you think it's on the back of Isak finally saying, no, lads, and them going, right, we've got to get something done here, and it might be just a matter of increasing the finances, which God knows they can afford? Or is there some extra little wrinkle in it that makes you think it's more likely?
No, it is a fair question, and someone will always retort, and this is fair. Well, Newcastle failed about 26 forwards this season, this summer, haven't they, trying to bid it? So there's that in the mix. Absolutely fair. You couldn't debate that at all. I think the thing is, as you said, it's the combination of circumstances now. Isak has had that meeting with the senior brass at Newcastle and made it clear he's not backing down. Also with this one, it's the noises from both ends, the Newcastle end and the Wolves end. It's important to say that people are going to jump on they said he's not for sale. Yeah, do you remember how we said Luis Diaz wasn't for sale all summer? As in, no one's hit the magic number we want. And I get it. People will also say, well, hold on. If Wolves sell this boy, that's, double figures for goals. It could be the difference between them staying up. I'm not disagreeing or arguing with that at all. However, Wolves are making moves. A different type of attacker, but Uche's coming in. And there's a few others they're looking at in the market. But the big thing for me, as I said, it's the noises from the Newcastle end, like here, and the Wolves end, both saying they really expect, there's only a small difference that this will happen. The player wants it. And this is no disrespect to Wolves at all, but it's a great move for Strand Larsen, isn't it? To be fighting relegation, to then be playing Champions League and, potentially being the number 9 for Newcastle as well. Newcastle's acceptance, like you said, that Isak wants out. And what's probably best if you're a Newcastle fan is saying, let's get the best possible deal. So when you stack all those facts up, Trev, Newcastle could still screw the whole lot. We know that. They could still screw the bogey completely, but there is a hope with all those facts.
Yeah, the ongoing Callum Wilson replacement line is a source of incredible mirth to me. And I see some people have picked up on it in the chat panel there as well, because just have a look at his record for Newcastle. Like, what exactly are they replacing? It's a daft thing. And the kid who scored against us last night, Sula, is nominally his replacement anyway. And they've got that up-and-comer in him. So they just need to get their comparative marquee signing over the line. And hopefully that will happen. Look, it's going to keep developing. And the chances are, Dave, like you have already hinted at on a couple of your shows, there's a fair old likelihood that you and I will be wearing matching yellow outfits on deadline day. And there may even be hope of a deal getting done at the very last minute, because there are things lining up like that. And realistically speaking, if we're being honest, our next story, Marc Guehi, could be one of those ones that gets done at the very death, because there is a wrinkle. We heard about the City link, and then we've heard counter stories to that saying, no, he still prefers the Reds. But now Glasner has a particular desire to play him on Thursday's key game. And that's pushing it for Liverpool. Liverpool might even consider that to be a little bit cheeky, and you can understand why. You can also understand why Crystal Palace might want to keep him for that particular game, given the significance of it. But if it does go past Thursday, there's every danger you and I are going to have matchy outfits, pal.
Yeah, it generally doesn't feel any other way the way this is headed. So, I mean, I mentioned it on the Daily Red on Sunday about, the USG, his agents have been approached by City to see what was the possibility. But as, various reporting, and Romano's got it on the screen there, good. I mean, I like hearing that Liverpool is his favourite destination. The big thing does seem to be, though, like you mentioned, Palace are determined to have him for this second leg, aren't they? To, get into the Conference League full, win this qualifier. So there's that. I think and a few people have mentioned this. Lewis Steele had it a bit earlier as well. There is the expectation that once this is done on Thursday, Liverpool will come back and, all parties are willing. If we can find this compromise, which is still the key question, isn't it? Because time is ticking. Hopefully it works in our favour. But the one, like you said, wrinkle in this, which is important to mention. Yes, Guehi wants Liverpool, but as the reports are there, they're not adverse to seeing the season out at Palace, aren't they, and going on a free. That's not seen as a disastrous situation for Guehi's camp at all. But all the hope is that this will get completed. And to be honest, you'll have seen all the reaction after last night's game and Mr. Canate's performance. People are wanting Marc Guehi through the door as fast as they can possibly get him. I'm not sure he solves everything, but he would help us a lot, wouldn't he, in that regard? But if the deal is going to be done for Guehi, I mean, after Thursday evening, so you're into Friday, Christ, Trev, you've got 4 days left to get it all sorted, haven't you? And it's also important to mention, Palace have got to get someone in, haven't they? I mean, Akanji's been linked and others will be mentioned, but they will have to get a replacement. This one has got yellow ties, outside AXA, get it all ready.
Yeah, because as you always say, we love a Friday. Our two boys love a Friday. But like the idea of us throwing a bag over Guehi's head on Thursday evening after the game and just dragging him off to Anfield because we know he wants to come and the clubs can sort out the business. That's fanciful because, like you say, they will want to have their replacement lined up. And we know they were linked with that Diamanda kid. That seems to have gone quiet. But now there are the ones you've mentioned, and hopefully they'll get one of those done. This thing of having to be dependent on other clubs doing business is a terrible, terrible set of lads when it comes to our well-being. There is another wrinkle, though, as to why we may be pushing it to the last day and the last hours of this window. Because, Dave, we have gone from some people, I think, when it went 2-2 last night, I've got some of the most gloriously morbid bastards on my timeline. It is just a treat if you're in the mood for it. But in the middle of a game where it's going poorly, I genuinely can't even look at my timeline most of the time. The darkness was oozing forth from these people. And not only were we going to absolutely make a balls of the entire season, we were going to make a balls of this transfer window. It was going to be absolutely worthless. We're a joke club, etc. This is how extreme it was. And now, today, Isak looks more likely. Guehi looks more likely. And give the people a treat because you have got this stood up. We're interested in another body as well.
I mean, I don't know whether I was excited or it gave me a headache between all the screenshots that you've seen the different bits and chasing things today. But yeah, is the short answer. And follow along with me here, people. There is genuinely a chance of a third. Liverpool are looking at options at the moment. The big thing to call out, and I think when people look at a transfer fee, and just this is just an illustration, this is not exact, but people will look at, say, 100, let's just call it 100 million for Isak, and say over 5, we'll chop it up, it's 20 million a season. It never works that way, does it, Trev? It's all about how much Newcastle are going to ask for the down payment, second payment, all those types of things. And the later you go in the window, the more clubs can just move it at the last minute, can't they? Just go, oh, sorry, did we say 50 million up front? Sorry, it's 70 million up front. And obviously, Liverpool need to get that deal done. So that comes into the mix. And you're thinking, why am I talking about this? Because it sounds like Wish.com, Carol Vorderman type of thing. The reason I'm talking about this is Liverpool's third move will depend on almost what's left in the pot, how the finances work. That if they have to commit a certain amount to Alexander Isak this summer, it genuinely means there might not be that much, in the pot left to go for another. However, if you can get decent terms, again, you've seen the screenshot, it's been digging all day. Liverpool are genuinely looking for another attacker. Now, people are going to say, like, oh, is it Morgan Rogers? Is it Fofana and all this? And again, it sounds like a politician, I get, but it's not a yes or a no. Liverpool don't know what's left in the pot yet, don't they? They don't know fully what they're committing themselves to. And they won't commit to another until they know Isak's locked in or it's not, and we move on type of thing. But the key thing, and as you said, having it stood up, is Liverpool are looking at a third option. And interestingly, the other bit we got with when they did the deal for Tyler Morton, do you remember from Lyon? They have got a lock-in with, I don't know even what you call it with Lyon, and almost like an agreement around Malik Fofana, in the next few windows, is in what we can bid for him, the ability to match it, as you'd say, in that type of regard. That's why Malik Fofana's name keeps coming up time and time again. Am I saying it will be Malik Fofana? No. Am I saying Liverpool will definitely get a third? Absolutely not. What I am saying is Liverpool are trying to obviously lock in Isak, know what they're doing, and time is ticking fast, isn't it?
Now, the first question I asked you on the back of this revelation was, but is it another one that we're looking for at rather in case Isak breaks down, or the number that they want up front is too big, or whatever it happens to be? Is it in other words a sort of a pivot, or is it all three if we can swing it? And you seem to have had the feedback that if we could do all three, we would do all three.
Yeah. And there's that famous phrase, as it would come back, as you know, that chasing people and getting answers. Creative accounting is always a great thing, as they say, but it will just all really come down to how much, if we get Isak, are we locking in? Now, it's great that Liverpool, and I keep seeing this figure, which, again, 130, 135 million, everyone's banding about. And yeah, I've heard that. We've had suggestions. But the big thing getting today was there's no guarantee yet how much Newcastle, if we do the deal, touch wood, are going to ask up front. What are the payment terms for this deal? And that is going to be the knock-on effect for, can you do the third, yes or no?
Now, you mentioned on your show earlier on, it's not here on our agenda, but people will be pissed off if we don't mention it. So I'm just going to bring it up to annoy you. Before we get to some of the outgoings, there was a story going around of, I don't know what origin, that we were looking perhaps, if the exact thing was hitting a wall, to pivot quite strongly to one of the people we were very excited about back at the start, which is our pal over in Spain at Atletico. Now, I don't know how real that story is. It seemed to be getting repeated by people who had a little bit of common sense. Whether they were also just in hopeful land, I don't know. Is there anything to that? Did you ever get to the origins of where that came from?
From what I understand, and for sort of asking again, it is a player we've looked at, of course. We all know this. We've had the talks with Jorge and, his people. But Alvarez, whilst not fully happy with Diego Simeone, family seems to be there in Spain. It almost as well, the way I would phrase it is, from what we've had, it's too late to pivot to a deal of that magnitude, if that makes sense. When you're spending a sort of the 120 million it would take, those are not deals you do last minute in the last 5 days as a swing, are they? Realistically, it doesn't really happen. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but I've already ticked it off my list, unfortunately.
What about amounts that are lower down the list? Because I definitely saw something there throwing an eye on the chat panel about wondering, was there a pivot option with Guéhi? And again, I asked you this question directly last week, and we discussed how neither of us had seen anything. The only other defender I'm hearing mentioned at the moment in the news is being linked with Arsenal, and that's Hincapié, someone we'd really, really love to have at the club, who would be ideal, but it's not Liverpool being linked with him. And there doesn't seem to be that secondary name doing the rounds. Now, does that mean there isn't one? Absolutely not, because we have lads who can keep stuff under their hat. But it's fair to say, isn't it, that for the second week in a row, there is no obvious other option. And because I know it upsets people, the Guéhi or bust, Isak or bust thing. It upsets the shit out of people because they've watched the games like us, Dave. They can see that our squad, for all the wonderful additions we've made, is not fit for purpose to win the league yet. Things need to happen at this last moment in this window for us to have a realistic opportunity to win this league. I think that's fair.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with anything you've just said, but whether people like it or not, and again, it would be great if the clubs were keeping this under hat and, Edwards and Hughes were going to spring a big surprise on us, but the info does seem to be Guéhi or bust, that they see Guéhi as a market opportunity. They signed Leone to be the full centre-half, that junior one, if you want to call it that, to replace Kwanzaa. They either get Marc Guehi this summer at the reduced fee, or they wait until he's on a free. That's the aim. There's no, unless they're hoodwinking everyone, which I would love them to do in a way. Let's not lie on that. That seems to be Guehi or bust for this.
They are the big stories which will have attracted the vast majority of eyes and ears today. If you have come in late, I point you back to it, listen to the podcast. But there are some other bits and bobs going on. And one of the stories that I find quite interesting, and it just broke today, I think via Ornstein, is about young McConnell and his move to Ajax, which to me just has that sort of premium feel to it that suggests not only do Ajax rate this player, but the club really rates McConnell.
Yeah, this has been, out of all the options for James McConnell, absolutely handpicked. And the reason he's going there, don't get it twisted, is Johnny Heitinga. Johnny Heitinga, do you remember, he used to be our assistant coach that went to be head coach at Ajax? And he's already got Vítězslav Jaros off us, the keeper. He was the big driving force that wanted McConnell. They do rate this kid at the club. They do think there is potential he could become a first teamer. And it's a great move, isn't it? A 5-year contract, so you've got the asset protection. And Ajax, I mean, it's a great move for him in the sense they're one of the more dominant teams in not the best league. And he can play in, Europe, look good, all those types of things as well. So, Johnny Heitinga there saying, yeah, under my tutelage, Slot knows him. They know how he'll get used as well. So this is a deliberately hand-picked move that Liverpool and McConnell are delighted with. But it's important to say, because we've mentioned other youngsters, haven't we, and said, I'm not sure they've really got a future. I mean, we said what happened with Bobby Clark. I'm not sure Bajcetic has got a future, but there is a few, and Rio Ungamoa is a different case now altogether, but Ungamoa, Trey Ione, McConnell, these are some of the ones at the age where the club think, yeah, he's got a real chance. This is a great move for this kid.
Look, Ajax are not the club they were
No.
in the early 80s when Jan Mulby signed for them, coming from a sort of rural Danish village to be part of that team. Rubbing shoulders with Jesper Olsen and Johan Cruyff. Equally, they have in recent years signed Liverpool players like Jordan Henderson, who was the washed version of Jordan Henderson.
True.
But Ajax do have that level of respectability
Yeah.
at the elite stage when it comes to the development of young talent. That has never gone away from there. They've always been elite in that area. And for them to take on a young talent in the form of McConnell, I think is really revealing. And I think it could do absolute wonders for him. You could be looking at someone who will be absolutely transformed by this particular experience. I'm tremendously hopeful this is going to do the world of good for James McConnell. I'm really, really excited for him, for this particular move, to see how it works out.
Yeah.
I think it's tremendous. Before we move on, the Harvey Elliott out story is also being mentioned a lot. It seems to be contingent on Chelsea doing some business. We flagged this up, not the last show, but the last show and the show before. It seems to be just like we're repeating ourselves from week to week here because we're waiting for the various dominoes to fall. This is the story of our summer, buddy. Is that still the same situation? Is Leipzig still the most likely destination for Elliott?
Possibly when we get to the European section, because Mr. Ornstein dropped his deal sheet this morning article, didn't he? So Harvey Elliott got a little bit of a mention in that. And there's another knock-on effect. So when we come round to the European, we'll give a little bit more for Harvey and that link as well.
Excellent. Anything else there that has come up in the Liverpool section just before we move on in the last minute or over the last half hour that you didn't get that in?
No, I think we're, in a good way, we're at the point in the season where, listen, we love a breaking story, don't we? And a random player being linked and something. We love all that. Of course we do. But we're at the stage where, 6 days left in the window? Literally, it shuts at 7 o'clock, doesn't it, on Monday? And it's 7 o'clock now. So we're pretty much, bang on the wire here. I don't think you're going to see anything pop out. We've got a good idea who the targets are because Liverpool have reinforced in most of the positions. We're now just in this death or glory phase.
Oh, before we go, I heard you mention it on, I think, News Round this morning. And just in case there are people who basically just listen or watch this show and therefore rely on this show to give them all the transfer stories, they will have heard the Rodrigo rumors over the last while. But I heard you kind of put a bullet in the back of that head as well. And it seems to boil down to the fact that Rodrigo likes money. And he likes the money that he's used to. And the money that he expects is somewhere in the region of 300,000. And that seemed to be, for you, the key reason why this is not going to happen in terms of a move to the Premier League, to Anfield. It may be a move elsewhere, but you seem to be very convinced that that has pretty much put the kibosh on it from our perspective.
Yeah, if it was ever going to happen, you'd kind of want to hear by now Rodrigo's prepared to lower his demands or make concessions. You'd want to hear something like that, wouldn't you? But even the reports from Spain today were coming out that they're moving, that they expect Rodrigo to stay. And yeah, I mean, like the 300 grand a week, maybe we should have expected this because he's hanging around with their new number 9, Le Petit Shite, isn't he, up top? So we'll be feeding him all the stories about his allowance and what his Mars doing for him as well. So maybe we should have expected it. But I just can't see the lowering of the package, the wages, the fee by now. Just can't see it.
Midnight Toker there just asked, is Elliott's move to Red Bull on? And I think Midnight Toker's been token away there because we've just been talking about that lad,
2-3 minutes.
5 minutes. Fair play. That's impressive. Right, we'll move to the Premier League in general now and get a few more stories for people around other clubs. And of course, we should start with Chelsea. It looks like there's quite a bit of interest in some of their players. They definitely have Nicholas Jackson getting tapped up by all sorts, or at least that's the rumor. That all these clubs are interested in Nicholas Jackson. Disasi is also someone who's attracting a couple of eyes from the Premier League. Chukwuemeka is another who's moving around, and they are going to bring people in too. That's for sure. I can't see them not. Talk to us about Chelsea. What's going on there in terms of moves out, and more to the point, any attractive moves that they've got in. We do know, and you haven't even mentioned it here, because we do know that one of those is our man from Red Bull Leipzig, who will probably have to come to Chelsea in order for Harvey Elliott to go there. So maybe talk us around those.
Yeah, they do feel the club that have the potential of doing the most business in the Premier League before it finishes. I mean, Nicholas Jackson's still there. Everyone knows he's going to move on. The latest links have him with Bayern Munich. I'm just going to say this, though. This is coming from Christian Falk. So I'm just going to present that without comment. Let people, that's all I'm going to say. Yeah. Bournemouth have made an inquiry for Axel Disasi, and I'm going to come back to Axel Disasi because I didn't have time to find this photo, and I wish I had so badly. Chukwuemeka is now a Dortmund player, so that deal's done. And Salmino is set to follow, but on loan to Dortmund at the same time. Incomings-wise, yep, you mentioned Xavi Simons, and everyone's kind of waiting for that one. But Ornstein dropped this at 2:00 today, didn't he? Saying they're looking, knowing that Barcelona, of course, have Barcelona problems, at the possibility of a move for Ferman Lopez. And in fact, there are more stories that they've already made contact and prepared to do that, which you think, well, hold on. He's an attacking midfielder. He's a hell of a talent as well. Why would you buy him and Xavi Simons, which I think is a prudent question if this does sort of accelerate on that one as well. So there's a lot could really happen for Chelsea. The best bit, though, is Disasi. Do you remember last summer when they were falling out with the likes of Chalobah and Gallagher, and they made them train like at the complex away and then at the leisure centre and everything like that, Trev, when they kind of banished them from the training ground? Disasi took a picture and got made to take it down of, as it's called, the Chelsea bomb squad. You know, the place you didn't want, like, in this little tiny changing room, which literally looks like your local leisure centre where you get changed for five-a-side type of things, not like a glorious Premier League. It was brilliant. And there was Disasi, Chukwuemeka, a few others, Badashile. And the best one was there's a little picture of a guy called Alfie Gilchrist, who's a Chelsea youngster who's they're trying to get out as well. And he was just sat there like, head in his hands, like, what am I doing with my life type of thing. Just like it's honestly, I wish I'd found it. It's a brilliant photo. But as people are commenting, and Chelsea fans, it's quite clear they've set up that bomb squad dressing room away from everyone to try and push the players out. So Sweeney Todd is still doing Sweeney Todd things. They could generally be the one that does the most madness before it closes.
Everyone always thinks the Premier League squads are just like floating around in their lovely leisure gear, in their flip-flops, going around like picking out the right yogurt and blueberries and having chats and high fives and, Mo Salah sitting at his Mo Salah bench in his Mo Salah coffee bar. But that's just us. Other clubs have absolute carnage going on. And even Liverpool in the past, every one of the 80s greats that I interviewed. I've been lucky enough to talk to all of them. And the one story they all had in common was Ronnie Moran saying, throw your medals there. There's a box, a busted old cardboard box with the medals. Take one if you think you deserved it. And the other story was there's always a bunch of lads who are disgruntled and pissed off, and they gather together. At Liverpool, we used to call them the sour grapes. And they would train with a bad, nasty edge on them. Everyone just grumping and groaning and giving out about the world. Why would it be any different? Why would it not actually be worse? And of course, it's really interesting to hear that that's going on at Chelsea. You can be sure it's happening at Man United as well. We might get to United, but let's go to Palace next, because we know that they're looking to replace Eze, and it looks like they've got this Pino guy lined up. But they're also chasing up Conor Gallagher, who had a successful spell there with them before, and a high-level defender as well.
Yeah, considering Glasner was obviously raging, wasn't he, in their last game, the press conference saying, well, if Guehi goes, I have to put my boots on and all this. It still has the potential to be as good an ending as it could get for Palace, if that makes sense. Because Marc Guehi, obviously, we want him to come to us. And this one, Palace had made an approach to City for Manuel Akanji, who looked like he was on his way to Galatasaray for somewhere around sort of the 15, 16 million mark. So if they could sell Guehi for somewhere close to 40 and get him in for 15, 16, I wouldn't say that's the worst business Palace could do. Ez is gone. We know the big money that they've got, 60 million plus for him. And as you say, that Pino, the Villarreal boy, he looks like he's coming in. They are, in advanced talks. There's various reports there. Difficult to say what the fee is because one journalist had it about 40 million. As is famous this summer, one had it at 40 million euros, Trev, because people love just quoting it in both, don't they, or doing different things, as we know, all summer. So we'll see what it could end up being. And also, like you mentioned, Conor Gallagher, who had such a good time on loan there and is now an Atletico Madrid player, they have asked about getting him back as well. So nothing's guaranteed yet for Palace, don't get me wrong. But if they lost Guehi and Eze, it is a big loss. But if they get back in Akanji, Gallagher and Pino and make a profit, I wouldn't say it's the worst deal all round, put it that way.
Honestly, that could be great for them. Genuinely, that could be great for them. Because a lot of people really rate Glasner. So I'm really, really interested to see what happens on the back of this. Next up, then, we'll go to City, because it still looks as though Ederson is on his way out. I don't think City are going to be too excited about the guy that's currently standing in for Ederson. And that's why they're being linked with Donnarumma, who, again, I think you explained to me last week what the fallout was at his current club, but I'm not 100% sure I remember what it was or the specific reason. But it does seem as if they're going their separate ways and he wants out. Savinho from City as well, still being linked to Spurs. Looks like they may still try to get that done. And Arsenal, because, when you get an injury, you buy someone. If you're Mikel Arteta, are eyeing up Hincapié, which is much to everyone at Liverpool's annoyance. So maybe go down through the City and Arsenal moves.
Yeah, everyone still expects Ederson to go to Galatasaray and Donnarumma to come in. That City have agreed terms with Donnarumma. It's just expecting that to happen at some point. And it is weird, like you say, the way that he wouldn't commit longer term to PSG. They were like, no, that's it. Then we're done with you. A year on the deal. Off you can go. They brought Chevalier in. It was literally a no. Luis Enrique's done the no then. Pigeon style, I'm getting a keeper who's better with his feet. Now, the reason I say that, they bought in young Trafford, isn't he? He was horrendous on Saturday. Did you see the goal he gave away? But he's supposed to be brilliant with his feet. The one thing about Donnarumma is he's a man-mountain of a keeper, isn't he? He's brilliant at penalties. What would you say is probably the one thing he's not the best at with his feet? And if there's one thing Ederson is brilliant, it is with his feet. I don't think there's any doubt of that at all. So it is an unusual swap around. And maybe Pep Linda's relentless book is coming into the mix, as people keep telling me. So, we'll see if there's a change in tactics there. Savinho, everyone is still saying to keep an eye on that one. But will Spurs put an offer that City just can't turn down? I'm not so sure, but it could well run right to the deadline. And Arsenal, Trev, I don't know if Arteta must have a left-back kink, mustn't he, really? It's just the fact that of all the positions, all the players they've got, Piero Hincapié, is the latest one. Now, don't get me wrong. I think he's a brilliant player. And we've said before, we'd have loved him to come to us. But in terms of what they have, and I know people will talk about Kiwior set to depart to Porto, with a loan with an obligation is the suggestion. But yeah, it's just like, how many left backs can you have? How many in the team? And I know, again, he's looking to shift on Zinchenko and all this, but I can't genuinely remember a squad where a manager just seemed to keep, like Arsenal, spending and spending and spending. Lego Head's got over $1 billion now, I think, hasn't he, in the latest stats? And how much of that has just gone on defenders and left backs especially is ridiculous.
I kind of want to come back momentarily to Liverpool for a second because you mentioned left back, and I don't know where we clear about. Did we mention? I know we talked about it the last day, but I wanted to just get it out there because I heard you speak about it on Newsround this morning. The left back situation at the Reds is odd. We've got Kirkes, who's clearly settling in. He's having some growing pains. We've got Andy Robertson, who seems to be very much diminishing returns, much to everyone's frustration. No one more than Andy Robbo himself, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But we've also got a lad there who's never let anyone down, but who just seems to be basically on his bike. The weirdest thing about Costa Tsimikas here is that the story is still going around today that it could be a loan, buddy. That's just a weird thing to me on every single level. I don't understand it. And I know you were going to come to this later on, but just the left back thing has raised its head here. And it's still Premier League potentially connected as well, because there were talks about moves to the PL, especially in Nottingham Forest. But now this idea of the loan to Roma seems to have stuck its head up. Just walk me through that and how it makes sense for a fella of Costa Tsimikas' age and status to be going for loan. I don't get it.
It's interesting. And in a way, I don't blame Tsimikas for this at all. He knows that Liverpool need to ship a left back and want to get rid of him. They know Liverpool can't run 3 left backs into this season. They know that. So Liverpool have kind of left themselves in this position a little bit, you could argue, because Robbo was obviously supposed to go out the door, wasn't he, to Atletico, and we wouldn't have this. But this is the important line in this tweet from Romano. There are 2 more clubs in the race for the Greek left back. Now, both those clubs, my info is they're Premier League and they want to do permanent deals. And that is where Liverpool would want him to go. But Tsimikas, and I'm not saying it is a FU type of thing, but he's saying, no, I would rather go to Roma, like a different country, different culture, that type of thing. He's agreed terms with them, and it is a loan offer they're making. So it might be something like a loan with an option, a loan with an obligation Liverpool would want. But the thing is to remember, the chips are not on Liverpool's side of the table, are they? They're with the buying club and they're with Tsimikas, because Liverpool need to get him out before the deadline, and he's got a say in how that happens.
Absolutely fair. And again, I know it's kind of a story from later on, but I just wanted to wedge it in there because we are talking about Premier League business, and it had been very strongly linked with Nottingham Forest. We do have a couple more Premier League stories, and Spurs is where we kick it off, because I think they stuck their heads into the Hincapié discussion and have been a little bit frustrated with a couple of different things. But apparently they are being linked with Morgan Rogers, who is apparently, again, I've said it again, up for sale. Now, I heard Dave Hendrick talking about how if Morgan Rogers is for sale, then Liverpool should be interested in Morgan Rogers. And I can't say that I disagree. You and I have both spoken at the start of this window about how wouldn't it be great if we could be involved in conversation with this guy. I think someone we both particularly just personally rate very highly. Yeah. But I don't know that that's really a goer. People were making fanciful what about Harvey Elliott plus kind of things going on. But again, that's a little bit more championship manager chat than real chat. Talk to us about Spurs working the Rodgers thing, and then if you don't mind, just give us a take on whether or not you think there's any chance of Liverpool being involved for this kid.
Yeah, it's been an interesting one for Spurs, because it was a bit of embarrassment, was it? Because they missed out on Eze. He went to Arsenal. That was embarrassing for Spurs fans. And it is important to say this. All the info I've got is that Spurs did make a contact over Hincapié, but because Arsenal came in and Arsenal, he's given priority to them. I get it. Spurs have no, we didn't. We never moved for it, because you don't want to be seen to lose out a second time, do you? Because then it's doubly embarrassing, as it was on the first occasion. But yeah, mine for us generally, Spurs tried for that. Now, this one would have been fascinating. They made a bid, because obviously they lost out with Eze, to Nico Paz, the youngster who's with Como. But this is important to say, Real Madrid made sure they turned this down because they've got high hopes for this kid and they've got the buyback clause as well. And, there's the agreement they'll compensate, as it says, Como in the future. So I would have been intrigued to see this kid in the Premier League because he is special. And I get why Real Madrid made Como shut that down for that deal. So they've missed out on that. Spurs have got money, though. Everyone knows this, don't they? Because you make a move for Hincapié, you make a move for Eze, and you fail. Everyone knows you've got cash. So they're in this difficult position of people are going to put inflated fees. Now, Morgan Rogers, Trev. How the hell am I going to introduce this without everyone going nuts? Right. Morgan Rogers signed a new deal with Villa about 7-8 months ago, give or take. I couldn't tell you the exact date, but a new deal. Now, since then, Villa missed out on the Champions League last season. Everyone knows about Villa's PSR issues, don't they? It's absolutely no secret. Villa are not actively looking to sell Morgan Rogers. They're not peddling him with that way. However, this is really important to say. A few journalists report it. It's kind of, I think you call it a bit of an open secret somewhat, that if you were to rock up with 80 million quid to Villa's table and agree to decent payment terms, that's important to say for Villa, they would look favourable on it. They don't want to sell the player, but in their current, what do you call it, predicament, because PSRs, one of those things that triggers people. But in their situation, that comes into the mix. Now, everyone's going to go, so we can get that. We've got to be crystal clear at this. It goes back to what I said in that section earlier. Liverpool are looking at a third player, but it all depends on how much you're committing to Isak. And this is the biggest. If Villa are looking for an £80 million fee and Newcastle are asking for, as the suggestion is, 135, that's a hell of a chunk of cheddar, isn't it there, Trev? About 220 million. How much is going to be committed up front? What are both clubs going to want? Now, Isak is obviously the priority for us. And the real suspicion is that, yes, Liverpool admire Morgan Rogers a lot. Yes, of course they would love him in their squad. But I think the big difficulty is with that Isak situation and not knowing exactly how much they're committing to right now, time is ticking. And I think it's going to make Rodgers, even if they could do it, very difficult. It's not exciting. It's not sexy to talk about, but finance and the nature of the deal may just scupper it.
Now, I hate to say it, but that crowd across the park at the Hill Dicko seemed to have got a couple of really good moves, like proper bits of business. You can say what you like about Jack Grealish, but he's clearly a baller when he wants to be.
Yeah.
And I saw a very interesting and quite emotional interview with him talking about his delight to be at the club. He's only there 10 days or something, but he was talking about the joy of just playing football and getting his love for football back, which I think says a lot about the Pep Guardiola regime, but they've also done a deal for Tyler Dibling. This is impressive.
Yeah, I do think low-key they've done some decent business. I really do. And, Moyes has steadied that ship a little bit as well. So, it looks like a decent... I'm just intrigued to see how he fits Dibling in and how it works. But Grealish on the left, Dibling on the right, you've got Ndiaye. That's a good bit of squad building, isn't it, for the Ev that way? United as well, that's the other one. That they are set to sign this, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, Lamens, I think it is, from Royal Antwerp, this young keeper, which, God, I mean, they're all terrible, the ones they've got, haven't they? And Onana's absolutely hideous. So it does feel like this youngster will come in and probably be the starting keeper. So where that leaves Onana, remember though, as Ruben Amorim keeps telling you, he has not dropped Onana. He's just not first choice right now behind that keeper who keeps letting goals in as well. So, yeah, there's some interesting business. And I bet coming into deadline day and deadline week, there's going to be some exciting stuff going off last minute.
There has to be. Yeah, the Ruben Amorim stats are getting pretty damning. I've seen them up there. They're quite glaring. less points than games played and so on. It's getting to be a little bit where he's going to have to start working some magic there pretty quick. So it'll be interesting to watch that, of course, as always. We have a few stories from around Europe as well as we go into the last 10 minutes of the show. We've already sort of teed up the Tsimikas to Roma thing. And that seems to be coming about, as you said, through player power, his wishes, rather than anything else. We've already teed up the Harvey Elliott thing as well. But maybe we could just kind of touch off both of them. A reminder that it was Nottingham Forest and who that were interested in Tsimikas. And Harvey Elliott seemed to be linked with at least 6 different Premier League clubs at one time. Tottenham, the most recent. Is there anyone else in the mix for him if the Leipzig thing falls through?
Yeah, it's interesting that Tsimikas, it does seem that Leeds and Forest were interested in him. You know, those are the Premier League clubs that are being linked. Marseille looks a bit of a non-starter now because they're set to sign the Emerson, the West Ham boy, and it looks like he might terminate his contracts. They might get him on a free, which is cut that. But Tsimikas has picked Roma as his destination. Harvey Elliott is an interesting one because he was mentioned in the deal sheet by David Ornstein saying that there is options. It's not certain he leaves, but mentioned Leipzig as an option and Premier League clubs are interested. As we said the other show, I don't know if it'll progress, but Villa made an inquiry, Spurs have made inquiries previously as well. So he is really one to keep an eye on. The big thing that is just interesting is almost going back to the Chelsea deal. Remember we said it seemed there was the merry-go-round of Xavi Simons would go to Chelsea, which would free up the spot. If Chelsea do move for Barcelona's Ferman Lopez, the suggestion is they wouldn't go for Simons as well, because you won't buy 2 attacking midfielders, would you, for the same position? So if that does put the brakes on Xavi Simons to Chelsea, what does that mean for Harvey Elliott? It's a bit of a question there, isn't it, realistically? And that's why, and this isn't a dig at David Ornstein, it wasn't really too much of an update in the deal sheet. He just left it all open, didn't he, to say Red Bull Leipzig are keen, but there are Premier League clubs. There's no guarantee that Harvey Elliott will go. Basically, everything is still possible for Harvey right now.
Yeah, and I hope when it happens and it gets solved that it's a solution the kid's happy with himself. Weird stuff happening at AC Milan with Victor Boniface failing a medical. There was a lovely sideline story as well, which we won't get into. But there's also more Italian news as well, with Napoli eyeing up a United player on loan. A couple of different bits and bobs then in Serie A.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame in a way for Boniface because the Saudi move fell through last minute and then he got to his medical. He was in Milan. He was in Milan for like 48 hours, wasn't he? And he ends up going home because, they failed the medical and that. And then, as you said, there's different posts, which was it about the club and, debates with Fabrizio Romano and all that. So, yeah, as it stands, Boniface is a Leverkusen player. But this one feels like it's going to happen that Rasmus, who's clearly not wanted by United at all, is going to end up on loan at Napoli to cover Romelu Lukaku, who's got that injury and is out for a few months. So the suggestions are a loan fee with an option. And Rasmus, United have finally got another one out the door, which will be interesting to keep an eye on, because if they can get him off the books, United still want that midfielder. We know they missed out on Baleba, didn't they, as well, because they were never going to get him with the fee they want to pay. But United still want a midfielder as well, desperately.
Yeah, and again, like you said earlier on, you'd have to keep your eye on them. I think there'll be stuff going on till the death with them too. It just seems to be the nature of it now, because lots of people are waiting for dominoes to fall. It just seems to be the way of it. And I think ultimately, Dave, there'll probably be a lot of disappointment on deadline day as well, where deals just don't get done because there isn't the requisite amount of time. We'll finish with Saudi because, we were keeping an eye on these from the start, wondering what level of disruptor they would be. But it seems that despite the money that's there, that there are less and less players wanting to take up that option. Now, it turns out we've actually done quite well to get the payout we did from that league for one of ours. But there are an awful lot of people, I think, as you said here in your note, probably keeping an eye on World Cup, maybe being told they have to play a certain level of football or they have to be in a certain league. And it may well be having an impact on the amount of players they can attract from the higher leagues.
Yeah, totally. And in fact, it's almost got progressively worse for the Saudi project, isn't it? Because a couple of years ago, they were the big paradigm shifters, weren't they? And, they were bidding for Mbappe. They were trying to shake up the market completely, and people were asking. Then it went down a little bit. But before the Club World Cup, everyone thought there'd be some big moves, and they were trying to do those. And now, exactly as you said, is kind of most players have said no to them, haven't they? I mean, Osimhen rejected them 6 times, I think was a record this summer because World Cup year, everything like that. People, there's no way of dressing up. It's just a pretty pants league, isn't it, really, all round? So people are looking at their World Cup ambitions. And this one, in the weirdest way, I am not sad to say, seems to have fallen through because Porto starlet Rodrigo Moura, who's kind of plays a striker, attacking midfielder, he really is seen as the new blue-eyed boy of Portuguese football. The one that can be the next superstar. And it looked like Mendes had set it up where he's off to Al Ittihad. And I'm going to be honest, a lot of the football world poured scorn on that to say, why is a young Portuguese talent with all that, ability and potential going to Saudi? He should be, building up, into the world star he could be. So it seems to have fallen through. So those things have come into the mix. It's just important to say because we never knew at the start of the summer what would happen with it. But you've got to be honest, the Saudi League really seems to have lost a lot of its luster. Despite the riches on offer, players just ain't interested this summer.
It's wild, isn't it? Because when some people have decided to go for it, like, do you think it's a situation where you have to be in a certain situation in your career, a certain point in your career, like where Darwin Núñez is, where Darwin can be fairly sure that he's such a big fish that he can probably get his game for Uruguay if he pulls up trees in that league. And also he was hitting that stage where it was clear he didn't really have a future at the club he was with, and there was no other real clear option for him. Like Darwin, I would be amazed if he doesn't use that league as a stepping stone to get back to European football and so on and so forth. But that's a very specific scenario, whereas an awful lot of lads, especially young up-and-comer like this, like you can understand that they would be wary moving there because, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but the main thing that really seems to stress footballers out here is the reports from other footballers about what's going on. I heard one during the week about how one club was clearly getting beneficial treatment to another. They were allowed train first. They were getting the sloppy seconds with the various canteen food and all the rest of it. Weird stuff. Plus, it's not big with the crowds. It doesn't have the same allure. They aren't the same level of celebrity. And these things all matter.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it almost started, if you remember the stories a few years ago, that when players started moving there, we were hearing about, I don't know how you put it, they were in giant planes and being flown around and treated like gods. And that was obviously part of the selling point. And now as time's gone on, players there have said, yeah, it's not that great. We've had issues with certain things, as you said. And obviously that's going to get round. And it's also telling how many have looked to come back. Do you remember like Gabby Vega, who went for big money and came back after a year? It really has lost the luster. It doesn't now seem to be for players at the tail end of the career or to get a payday like Ivan Toney, because he's on the lower wages at Brentford and do that for a few years. Or like you said, the Darwin of, I'll do this for a year, I'll score a shed load of goals, I'll get a springboard back to Europe and relaunch my career after the World Cup. But yeah, for all this talk of they've paid Ronaldo and everything a fortune, it really doesn't have that luster, this league, does it?
I think it was Ivan Toney who was doing the grumbling that I heard. We should start wrapping it up. Vance, as regards to McAllister and the situation and him being hurt and all the rest of it, we know what you know. We were told that his wife was due to give birth and he was out of the squad for that reason. So that's kind of what we know there. But Dave, is there anything that has come up over the course of the show that you want to drop in just here before we finish?
No, I just genuinely, like, we're here now. It's Tuesday evening, and obviously this time on Monday, the window will have just about shut. Things are going to have to move quickly. I mean, we're doing a show now on Tuesday evening. I'd be astonished if we aren't almost doing another one then deadline day as well, because almost we'll be, and hopefully we'll be saying, back to that strap line at the start, death or glory, as in we should be getting excited over one and we're jumping to do this, or if we're jumping on and making it up now, but if we're jumping on and say Friday and nothing's really developed, we are both looking and going, hang on, what's going on here?
Yeah, because we're looking at a game on Sunday. The chances of something breaking on Saturday, therefore, are minimal. So we're hoping that we'll be coming to you on Friday evening with a show which has at least one big story in it for us, and hopeful of a second. And then on deadline day, we'll be able to present to you 1, 2, who knows, even 3 deals. I think we'll all be disappointed if it isn't at least 2 at the end of it. But that's where we are, folks. Thanks for your cooperation, participation, all the rest of it. We appreciate your attention live. We appreciate your ears on the playthroughs afterwards on all the various podcast apps. A huge chunk of you watching live again, which is very much appreciated across the various methods. Slightly lower today than it has been in recent weeks. And I think that's because people have got like UFO disclosure exhausted with this. It's like, when is it going to happen? And I get it. But when it does happen, we will be here with you to present it to you. Thanks to Dave as ever for gathering together all the info for the show. We've enjoyed it and we look forward to talking to you next time.